Welcome to another episode of Prime Field, the podcast that takes you deep into the world of sports. I'm your host, Brian, and today we're going to dive into a controversial WNBA matchup that has the entire league buzzing. This past Saturday, the Indiana Fever suffered their first loss following the Olympic break, falling to the Minnesota Lynx by a score of 90-80. But the story of this game wasn't just about the final result. It was about the officiating and the perceived unfair treatment of Fever star Caitlin Clark. According to reports, there were a handful of plays throughout the contest that had fans up in arms, questioning the decisions of the referees. Let's start by taking a closer look at the first of these controversial calls. With just under 4 minutes remaining in the second quarter, Clark was hit with an offensive foul after seemingly shoving Lynx guard Kayla McBride to the ground. However, some fans claim that Clark was actually being held prior to the foul, and others believe that McBride may have exaggerated the contact through a flop. This was just the beginning of a series of questionable calls that sparked outrage amongst Fever supporters. As we dive deeper into the details of this game, we'll unpack each of the key moments that had fans questioning the officials' decisions and whether Caitlin Clark was indeed the victim of unfair treatment. But before we get into the specifics, let's take a step back and look at the broader context surrounding this matchup between the Fever and the Lynx. What does this game tell us about the current state of the WNBA, and how might these controversies impact the league moving forward? The first questionable call was certainly controversial, but it was just the start of a series of debatable decisions by the officials that had Fever fans up in arms. The second instance came with 6:40 remaining in the third quarter. Caitlin Clark put up a three-point shot when Kayla McBride came over to contest the attempt, knocking Clark to the floor. The referee, who was right next to the play, did not blow the whistle, and the game continued on. Some fans immediately dubbed this a clear foul, arguing that McBride made illegal contact with Clark. However, others suggested that Clark may have been embellishing the contact, essentially flopping to try to draw the call. These types of split-second judgment calls by the officials can often be the source of intense debate amongst fans and analysts. And as we'll see, this wasn't the only controversial moment in this game that had people talking. Let's take a closer look at the third questionable decision that really had the Fever faithful up in arms. The second questionable decision by the officials came late in the third quarter, and this one really had Fever fans up in arms. With under a minute left in the period, Caitlin Clark was hit with a travel call that many dubbed a phantom call. From the fans' perspective, Clark appeared to establish her right foot as her pivot foot and make a legal move to her left. However, the official may have seen a slight shuffle of her feet, leading to the travel call. Regardless of the technicalities, the vast majority of fans in attendance thought this call was simply incorrect. Clark had seemingly made a routine basketball play, but the referee deemed it an illegal travel. These three controversial moments, the offensive foul, the no call on the three-point attempt, and the travel violation, really set the tone for how the game was officiated. Despite another strong performance from Caitlin Clark, many Fever supporters felt their star player was treated unfairly by the referees throughout the contest. But as we'll discuss, the officiating controversies weren't the only story coming out of this matchup between the Fever and the Lynx. There were broader implications in terms of the standings, playoff implications, and the continued growth of the WNBA as a whole. These three controversial moments, the offensive foul, the no call on the three-point attempt, and the travel violation, really set the tone for how the game was officiated. Despite another strong performance from Caitlin Clark, many Fever supporters felt their star player was treated unfairly by the referees throughout the contest. But as we'll discuss, the officiating controversies weren't the only story coming out of this matchup between the Fever and the Lynx. There were broader implications in terms of the standings, playoff implications, and the continued growth of the WNBA as a whole. The Fever will be looking to bounce back from this loss when they take on the Atlanta Dream this Monday, August 26th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's another crucial game for Indiana as they fight to secure a playoff spot in the crowded WNBA landscape.